What's up, folks? Welcome to a new episode of Psicoactivo. Look who I have as guest today, Mr. Thierry Jamin, archaeologist, and Mr. Edward Valenzuela Gil from the Inkarri Institute of Peru. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you?
Very good morning, Pavel, and everything's fresh. And hi, very well. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for the invitation and for allowing us to give our version of the events as the initiators of the investigation in the face of so much information that sometimes has come out through other means from other groups that, let's say, have somehow taken the initiative of this investigation and left us in the background. But none of that is happening because we are still working. The Inkarri team is still working just with a low profile, keeping many things, because we are among those who believe that we must provide evidence and not make a spectacle or something very showy of this event, because we might be facing one of the clearest, most precise pieces of evidence that could change the history of humanity. So we have to give this investigation that level.
All right, let's start, if you agree, from the beginning, the origin and the place. What can you tell me about how all this discovery started? Obviously, you're not going to tell me where the site is, but any detail you can give me about the site? And how did you find these bodies at the beginning?
Well, for us, the matter started in October 2016 when a journalist friend of mine, Dante Rios Tombini, a journalist from Cusco, got in touch with a certain rancheros who, well, they had met on the occasion of a conference organized by a group called Alpha Omega. Well, it's more than a group, and Ronceros tells Dante about a discovery that a friend of his had made in 2015. And at the beginning, Paul Ronceros was talking to us about a site located in the Tacna area near the Chilean border. We kept in touch with Paul Ronceros for a few weeks, and little by little, we managed to find out that the site was in the Nazca area, and well, that's how the matter started. When we had the intuition that it could be an important and authentic matter, we started to investigate, and we also started to release the first videos in November 2016 on TV, on the internet. And Paul Ronceros didn't want to reveal his friend's name, so we named him Mario, because in the first videos we were talking about the leader of the Huaqueros, the criminal, etc. It wasn't very diplomatic. Let's also say that we were searching for Ronceros' friend, trying to identify him, locate him, get in touch with him. So since I have several friends named Mario here in Peru, in France, Inkarri had proposed to name this person Mario. That's why he became known through the network, etc., under the name Mario, even though his name is Leandro. And well, we went several times to the Nazca and Palpa area in January 2017, trying to locate the discoverer of the site. And thanks to an incredible set of circumstances, when we met Manuel Caceres in Palpa, we were able to locate Mario and make contact with him. And in the meantime, we had decided to cut our relationship with Paul Ronceros, because Paul in December 2016 was starting to spread crazy videos on his channel about the Bible, prophecies of Nostradamus, etc.
Oh, God.
He's going to stigmatize the whole matter, and it's time to cut ties with Paul Ronceros. And luckily, we were able to connect with Mario, and that's how the matter started. And in January, the Mexican journalist Jaime Maussan got in touch with us, and we met him in April. We invited him, as Eduardo says. In the meantime, we were able to find Mario in Bolivia because he didn't want to meet us here in Peru for the first time for security reasons, etc. And we started to have a good relationship. He showed us several bodies, several relics like these short-cut heads that look like llamas, the big hands, and the first complete reptilian-type bodies, let's say. And that's how the matter started for us, while little by little we discovered that the site was not in Tacna but in Palpa. And Paul Ronceros had given us several geographical information about the location of the site. And Mario, who didn't want to reveal the location of this site, also talked to us about some clues, gave us some hints, some geographical clues. And so in the framework of the investigations we carry out in the Amazon jungle, when we have witnesses of a place, we manage to locate it by triangulation. Okay. And in this way, we have been able to find more than 30 magnificent archaeological sites in the Amazon jungle. And we applied this same protocol with Nazca, and we managed to identify and locate Mario's site area.
So you already know exactly where it is. We believe
we have identified a place. Obviously, we don't say it for security reasons and because we need to confirm the information, because this is not a game. It's not like we're going to say it's in such and such a place while we don't have concrete things.
What I can assure you, Pavel, is that contrary to what Jaime or Joyce say, it's not about mines and it's not in Palpa. The site is not in Palpa and it's not a diatomaceous mine.
It's something.
So what is it?
Let me tell you a little more. This video that is coming out of a possible place where the mummies have been found is the same place where we were invited, and this journalist Mantilla was with us. We arrived at the place, we recorded because we always have audiovisual information of all the work we do as testimony, as proof. We arrived at that place, but for us, I tell you, Thierry, Jose Casafranca, myself, when we arrived at the place, we didn't believe at all the version that this was the place.
Right away we said it's not.
For us, that's a deception. And we told the Huaquero who took us and told us that this is the place. We told him, you're deceiving us. This is not the place. And that's why we, the Inkarri team, never released this video, because we consider it's not. Something that Mr. Mantilla did, presenting it as if it were the place and more, I think more to gain spectacle, transcendence, I don't know, right? So there's the difference. And that's why for the Inkarri Institute, that place that appears on social networks is not we have. Yes, I mean, after we continued investigating, and as I was saying, we believe we have the location, but for now, we can't disclose it until we have proof that confirms this, right?
Totally understandable.
Besides returning from the supposed site, which was a cave, what Mario had shown us, we had returned from this diatomaceous cave. We met with Mario and we said, well, where is the real site? And Mario laughed and told us, well, it's not the right place. That's true, but one day I'm going to show him the place.
He himself has acknowledged that it's not the place, but he did it just to mislead, something like that.
And because of the pressure, because there was this legal process and Mario needed to prove to the judge, the prosecutor, and the media, because he was under a lot of pressure at that time. We're talking about August 2017. He was under a lot of pressure. So he had to show an anonymous site outside the Ministry of Culture's area to avoid legal trouble. So he exhibited this site and we went, as Edward said, with Joyce Mantilla. And then Mario took some ufologists from the Nazca and Palpa area to show them. And so they would also say that this is the discovery site to put their minds at ease. Mario, I assume it was for this reason. And since then, Jaime, etc., they talk about this site as if it were the site, but it's not. We can guarantee you 100% that it has nothing to do with the site. And besides, it was a tiny cave and there wasn't enough space to hide all the material, all the bodies that have been found to date.
A question, if you're telling me this, does this mean that Jaime and Joyce don't know where the site is?
Jaime doesn't know, Jaime Maussan doesn't know. Joyce has clues, and I think Joyce has the approximate area of the site, but Joyce knows that the cave we found is not the site.
Wow, okay.
And so all the clues that Roncheros and Mario explained to us, we confirmed in the area. What we can say is that it is located in the legal area of Nazca.
And when you talked to Maussan to get him involved, what made you guys call Maussan? Why did you guys call Maussan and why didn't you call another journalist from another place?
It's because Jaime contacted us.
He called you guys?
Yes. There was, if you want, he had heard about this news through our friend, great friend, Jose de la Cruz, who lives in Campeche, and we greet him very warmly. He's like a brother. But with Paul Ronceros' show, Jaime didn't believe this story. It seemed like a joke. Did it seem like a joke?
Yes, I mean, they were taking it as a joke. And that's what they themselves have stated, that when they came here to Peru to visit us and see the bodies, they came with the intention of denouncing all this and believed that we were involved in a hoax.
No, remember, it's that when Jaime found out about the interest in the Inkarri Institute and the first videos, he took the matter seriously and then got in touch with me. Yes, in a second stage of investigation, we're talking about January, February 2017.
Because even before Mausan's presence, we had already called some forensic specialists to see the bodies, we had already summoned others in radiology, we had already done the first x-rays, etc. So with all that information that we were already spreading on social media, Mr. Mausan found out and called us. Of course, he was one of the first people we called. I wish there had been other specialists who also joined this, but in reality, he was one of the first who approached and asked to meet with us. And that's why we opened the doors for him, so he could see with his team the pieces we had.
For example, Brian Forrester, who investigates a lot about the Paracas skulls, came here to see the first bodies of Paul Ronceros. And Brian got in touch with Ronceros and wanted, from what I understood, the exclusivity of the discovery. And we didn't allow it, so Brian turned against us. Yes, as a detractor, as one of the first detractors. Then a French audiovisual production company, which I won't name, came to my house in November 2016 to see the first bodies. They also wanted exclusivity. They had made a contract with Paulo Ronceros, offering him a lot of money, and we opposed it. And when they returned to France, they became detractors of the matter. But to finish like this, we've had a bit of a bad experience. I don't know if you remember Pavel, an English journalist, Steve Mera.
Of course, I know who he is.
Who had come here, was convinced, had made a first documentary film in favor of the case, etc. And they wanted exclusivity, took some samples of Maria, etc. And we had a very important meeting in Paris in November 2017, and they wanted to sign a contract with us for exclusivity until, you're not going to believe it, they wanted to create a park in Los Angeles dedicated to the Nazca Mummies and the ufology theme in collaboration with Eric Van Deniken, and that's why they wanted exclusivity, etc. Meanwhile, they had conducted DNA analysis of Maria in India and had seen that there was a non-human part. And I remember that at that time they talked about primate DNA. I think they talked about gorilla, and it seems strange to me. We didn't give it importance at that time. But they wanted then Steve Mera and his colleagues from Great Britain to create a whole park. I swear it's the truth.
I believe you, because Mera didn't act well. He was very irresponsible.
So I find that because we wanted
to investigate the truth.
And besides that, we wanted not to say a profit, but an economic return for the operation of Inkarri. We are a small non-profit organization, and we wanted a counterpart. Look how normal, look at the contract, $0 for us. And we thought they were taking us for fools, for clowns, so we cut ties. And from that moment they became enemies, detractors of the matter. And a few months later, a documentary came out in Great Britain against the Nazca matter. It was Steve Mera's second documentary, which turned him into a critic of the matter. And that's it, just that, because they haven't been able to regain exclusivity on the matter. Another thing, I'll tell you something else. In March 2017, that is, we went back just before meeting Jaime Maussan, we were contacted by a Frenchman named Erwan Guégan. And Erwan Guégan is kind of an adventurer, I don't know. A mobster who deals with gold mines in Bolivia and who also represented, he says, the industrial economic interests in Europe and the US that had a lot of money and intended to help the Inkarri Institute to recover as much material as possible, conduct analysis, etc. Well, I was a bit naive. Oh, great. We're going to meet in Peru, then they come. We're going to pick them up in Lima and head to Palpa. We meet with Mario, and in the end, they try to make a direct business deal with Mario and us, you understand? Yes, they wanted to cut us out, yes. And so I know they bought Mario. It's a scandal. Several bodies that have been taken to Europe, to Switzerland, and they signed an exclusivity contract with Mario. And a few months ago, the comic side of the matter, I received a letter from a Parisian lawyer telling me that I had no right. I imagine Jaime Maussan received the same. We had no right to talk about the mummies, nor to disseminate any images because everything belonged to Juan Guigan, who had the intellectual rights. Well, nonsense. And that all the material, the findings belonged to him and the European industrialists etc. And yes, so well, I replied, and obviously all that had no validity. And to this day, we have not received any response from the lawyer. It's as if we had sold Erwan Gigon, Machu Picchu, or the Eiffel Tower, Chichen Itza, and all that. Pavel, to explain to you that around this matter, there are many, many economic interests of people who are not interested in this matter of the mummies for science, in the name of science and universal knowledge, what we are trying to do, but for economic interest. And for 8 years, we have always been fighting with this. We have had the same problems with Jaime Maussan and with Gaia from the US. They had made us promises, don't worry, we are going to support the Inkarri Institute, we are going to make a donation, nothing so. Sometimes we say, Eduardo or Jose, we are the big fools, the dumbest on earth.
No, I think here we have a very important topic that you are touching on, which is a topic that hits all of ufology, not just this. And obviously, it is a discovery that is going to change a paradigm of humanity. And unfortunately, as we live in a materialistic world, these kinds of things are happening. So it is clear to me the intention you have. And that's why I think it was very important for you to be on this channel and also to give other interviews to other channels that also want to bring out the truth. And if you give me permission, I would like to connect you with other people, my colleagues who are looking for the same thing. The truth is that it makes me very sad that you are telling me this and how you have been treated, because it is tremendously unfair. But I understand that you are working with responsible people right now who are doing scientific studies. I don't know if you want to tell us a little more about this effort that is being made with people you do trust.
Look, obviously we can't give many details about that, but we are working with 2 major universities in the US and with high-level scientists who are very interested in this topic. I can also tell you that there are ufologists in the US, very renowned, who are interested in this topic, but obviously for the moment they don't want to appear, they don't want to be named for taking care of themselves, because as you know, there are many controversies, and the detractors, many of them are very aggressive, and so they prefer for the moment to take care of themselves and stay a bit behind. However, we are working with several universities on the topic that are convinced that we are facing something authentic and very important.
Let me tell you that yes, indeed, and for the entire community that follows this case, the Inkarri team continues in the investigation. We have not left this at any time, only now we are doing it. Well, after having had all this spectacle with Mr. Maussan, we have decided to work with a low profile, and also because, as Thierry says, many people have contacted us. We cannot give names, but these same people are the ones who have asked us to keep their identity while they investigate, because they have also told us that they are not involved in this type of spectacle. They want to contribute with their knowledge, with their research, and they also don't want to come forward until they have information that they are investigating. So it is the agreement that they will continue investigating, and for their safety, for the safety of the investigation, everything is done in reserve, and that is why we are working, as they say, with a very low profile, but be sure that we continue investigating. And what here? The only thing that interests us here in Inkarri is to know the truth. That is what we have said since 2016 when we started. If these bodies, there is evidence that they are a fraud, we will say it, but so far rather we are confirming that we are facing a great discovery. So we have to continue in that line, because we must give, I think, to this case a universal academic transcendence and not take it to the side of the show, of the spectacle that we believe does a lot of harm to the investigation of the Nazca case.
There are university teams that have come here in Peru to see things more closely, take samples, and today they are conducting DNA, protein, carbon-14 analysis, etc. And they are convinced of the authenticity and transcendence.
About that of the proteins, I want to ask you something, because we have hit a wall many times in the community that I'm in for this topic of the llama head. And you told me that there are similarities, but do you think it has a llama head? Or are they just similarities because they found proteins? I understand from a camelid, right? If you can tell me.
Well, I'm not a specialist, so I can't speak in detail about that, but it is true that there are many similarities between a part of the llama or alpaca skull and the skulls of the small reptilian type. Is that true? There are similarities, but what I know is that there are differences. For example, I know that Professor Roger Zuniga's team from the UNICA that I greet, I hope he will recover his health, have conducted comparative DNA analysis of the skull, an intercostal part, and the femur of Albert's hip, and they have seen that the DNA matches, that is, it belongs to the same body, and from the intercostal part and the hip, obviously, I don't know, it's not llama bone bodies, so I believe that the bodies like Josefina, Albert, Victoria, or Artemis are authentic. They are genuine. Besides that, for example, the DNA analysis of Victoria has been done, and it comes out as unknown that we had presented before the Peruvian Congress in 2018, and the investigations continue, and Victoria's genome with Maria's genome are on NSBI, the US medicine platform, and any scientist in the world can connect to this data and have the raw data of Maria and Victoria's fast and have their own conclusions. Now, maybe the Nazcas, or, well, I don't know, we talk about the Nazcas, let's say they have rectified, they have made, I don't know, dolls the same based on bones, llama bones, etc. That I don't know, it could be a possibility. We have seen anomalies in several of these bodies, and that show that those who have dealt with these bodies sometimes have rectified the bodies. For what reason? We don't know today. Even the dead, sometimes the corpses are
fixed so that before they are buried, when they have suffered accidents, they try to fix them up.
They manipulate them, yes, and maybe it was done if the same happened in some cases. However, for example, speaking of Albert's case, we have seen that Albert had health problems of osteoporosis. And it seems complicated to me for a modern huaquero scammer to create a body with these symptoms of bones with osteoporosis, which are very weak, and also has a plate in the right hip. And we have seen that the bone has reacted to the plate because there is sclerosis. And that happens, there is a biological reaction that only occurs if the being is alive. And what about Victoria's case? You know, it has a bone called the furcula. We have seen that it had a fracture, and this fracture has healed, it has fused, it has mended, and that can only happen with a living being.
Yes. Natural regenerative abilities that we have.
Exactly. It can't just be a simple huaquero setup to build an alien doll. So for us, there are genuine bodies and others where there are doubts. And in the bodies where there are doubts, they are creations of the Nazcas or modern looters to make profits.
A question, the bodies that were taken to Mexico, because I have interviewed Mr. Achirica, Mr. Joyce, and Mr. Mausan, and I wanted to ask them about the legality, how the bodies were brought, because let me tell you, among the UFO community in the US and Great Britain, the moment Mr. Mausan's name is mentioned with this case, the vast majority have a dismissive attitude. And within the circles I'm in, I've heard very concerning things about this legality issue. To start, the bodies that went to Mexico are the two bodies that are considered authentic, right?
We don't know because we haven't had the opportunity to examine them. I'm not a doctor, nor is my brother Edward, but we haven't seen tomography or analysis documents on these bodies. I assume they are genuine because after the exhibition presentation they did after September 12 in the Mexican Chamber of Deputies with our friend Fernando Correa, they have done live tomographies and have been examined. Clara and Mauricio are the names of these two bodies, and they seem genuine. However, the fact that these bodies have left Peru is a scandal. We have reported it to the Ministry of Culture, asking them to take legal action, and we have always denounced this trafficking, and it is a crime, and it's a shame because we see that there are many of this trafficking. That's why, speaking of the site, we don't want to give more details of the precise location to avoid looters and the depredation of this great heritage, but yes, it is a shame.
Yes, let me tell you that when we found out, we were not aware when this presentation happened in Mexico, and when we saw it, we almost fell backward because we were surprised that they had taken bodies. And that's why we made a statement showing our surprise and condemning this type of trafficking, because we don't think it's right. And from there, Our differences with the Mausan team began because we do not approve of the method they are using, and this has been distorted, and that's why I couldn't stand this tension anymore, and that's why we decided to cut all support with Mr. Mausan. So yes, even now we continue with documents. Less than a week ago, we received a document from the Ministry of Culture. I mean, we are always coordinating, seeing that this is, as I tell you, this is a matter that should be taken seriously and not in the way it is being done now. So that's what really bothers us about the attitude they are taking in the investigation. So this case has to continue. We are going to continue, but yes, we have unfortunately seen probably that it is being distorted a bit. It is changing. And the same thing that happened at the beginning with the detractors, that many of the current detractors initially supported the case, but when they were not given exclusivity, they became great detractors. The same thing is happening in all areas. So as you see, from the moment this topic of the mummies appeared, it has been controversial and it still is. But as I was saying, the people who believe in us in Inkarri keep betting because we are going in that line of investigation. We are going to continue despite the difficulties and have confidence that when we have results, we will say it. And don't be afraid of what I always told you, that we are going to give the results as they are. If they are true, great, and if they are bad, we also have to say it, because it's not a matter of who benefits here and all this, but the important thing is to know the truth of this investigation and to know the investigation of the results. Science has to speak here. We can say one thing, have our interpretation, but in reality, science, we cannot fabricate DNA. That's what science says. Carbon-14, the same with the DNA sequencing that is being done. We have to base ourselves and focus on that, which is what we should really be focusing on now.
We have always had doubts that it is a modern fraud. And always, Pavel, we play devil's advocate, looking for the flaw where Mario and his companions could have deceived them. But to this day, we have not found evidence. There are anomalies, that's true, but we have not found evidence that shows us that it is a modern fraud. For example, it was a big surprise when the National University of Engineering in Lima discovered the presence of osmium in one of the plates of the bodies. And I say to myself, why would Mario or his companions have put osmium, knowing how much osmium costs? Osmium is the rarest metal on the planet, and 1 gram of osmium is worth $1,800. So you can check the prices on Google. You will see that it is the most expensive metal in the world, much more than gold, than platinum. And also that osmium is found in an alloy of platinum and copper, I don't know what. And then where would Mario have gotten the osmium? And why would he have left the osmium in some plates if it had been a modern fraud? I think Mario would have preferred to sell his osmium directly to the international rare metals market rather than leave them in the plates of the mummies. And osmium has electrical abilities, communication systems, yes, in telecommunication systems, satellite, etc. So it seems to me a very, very important element in terms of authenticity. Then there are the fingerprints we found in Maria's case, and they also found these fingerprints in some of the latest hybrids that Jaime Mausan showed a few months ago. And how can you fake a fingerprint that seems completely different from those of Homo sapiens? So for me, there are more elements in favor of authenticity than of a modern fraud scam.
Very well. Something that caught my attention that they told me is that there are bodies that might be authentic that are going to other parts of the world too, not just Mexico. When I was interviewing one of the people I already interviewed, I won't say who to avoid exposing them. They mentioned that there were private collections in other parts of the world that already had bodies in their possession. And you mentioning it now is quite concerning, honestly. What else do you know about this practice that you can tell us?
Look, Pavel, we are indeed aware of that. And I assume that Mario is not the only one looting and taking material from the site. For 8 years, we have been investigating in the Nazca Desert and have realized that several locals know and there is trafficking. We know that material has been sold, not only in Mexico, but in Europe, in Spain, in Switzerland, in France, in Canada, in Russia, maybe in the USA. In Peru, things have been sold, and we always try to draw the attention of the Peruvian authorities, and yet, unfortunately, they do not act. when a few months ago we learned about a conference in Hollywood, we were scandalized to see the images of these supposed researchers. Well, and we contacted the Ministry of Culture to stay alert and act up to today. We are waiting for the response.
Why do you think they have ignored you, the Ministry of Culture?
The problem with the Ministry of Culture is that it does not have an exact position on these bodies. So I imagine they are at a crossroads right now and do not know whether to say if the bodies are real or fake. Because if they say they are real, they would have to accept the position they themselves stated since 2016 that everything is fake, that it had no value. So I think they have that sword of Damocles hanging over their heads, and to avoid problems, they prefer to turn a blind eye, right? But we do know that many bodies are being sold. And finally, as long as the state does not take a position, that is, does not determine if these bodies are real or fake, it will not take any measures, right? So I think they are also in a difficult problem.
The problem is that, as Eduardo said, from the beginning of this matter, they have taken a very negative and conflicting stance regarding this matter, perhaps because the officials of the Ministry of Culture have been poorly advised by the archaeologists of the Ministry of the Nazca area, by professional jealousy perhaps, or things like that. And another difficulty we have here in our beloved Peru is that in 8 years we have had 18 ministers of culture, so there is total instability and there can be no follow-up on the matter. And the only minister with whom we had good contact was Mr. Dr. Ciro Galvez, but he only stayed in his position for 2 months and they changed him. And so it is a bit complicated. And we always try to draw the attention of the current minister, and we are like this without responses. And so the trafficking continues.
Yes. Well, with everything you are telling me, I can only come to one conclusion. It seems that it is not just one site. There could be several, and it seems so. What you are making me understand is that there are still many bodies buried.
Yes.
And how many do you imagine there are more or less in, let's say, the only site you already know where it is? Do you think there are many bodies? Because we are already talking about an entire civilization, if not.
Correct. And look, in the Nazca area, the iconography is very rich. And from the Paracas culture to the Nazca culture, and that is, we are talking about 2,000 years. Huahuita and Victoria, we saw that these bodies were 1,000 years old. However, the Paracas culture appears in the 8th century before Christ, more or less. That is, we are almost talking about more than 1,500 years of possible contacts between humans and beings from we do not know where. So if they lived on the Peruvian subterranean for 2,000 years, and I believe that to this day we have indications that the site, part of the site remains active, there must be many bodies buried in the area. That is, there must be hundreds or thousands, who knows?
Yes.
Wow.
There are many bodies, and we must also take into account something that many overlook. If you notice, in the mummies we have managed to recover and that are at the university, and the others that have been shown, we have bodies that seem to be of different species. That is, they are not the same bodies. We have Maria, who is already 1.65 meters, almost human. We have the small ones of almost 60 centimeters, which are different. We have the hands we have seen, the large tridactyl hands, which would correspond to another species. Lately, some have come out that possibly had little wings on their backs. So we are talking about something very, very big, right?
One thing, I heard things, and I always ask everyone about a giant head. Is that true?
Well, Mario showed us some photos of 3 to 4 heads of this size.
3 to 4? So it's not 1, 3 to 4?
But we have not been able to examine them. I know that some of them have been sold, and we have not been able to see if they are skulls with bones or an artistic reconstruction or things like that.
Okay.
Look, the thing is we have to be careful. That's what worries me, that when this evidence, these photographs come out, they send them to others who are investigating, and the others release the news as a great discovery. Those photographs of the giant skulls have reached us a long time ago, but we can't give an opinion based on a photograph 2009. We would have to see it. So it would be very irresponsible for us to talk about giant skulls based only on a photograph, because we have to be sure of how it's made, if it's real, if it's fake. So that's why we don't disclose this information about the giant skulls, because we don't have, as I said, the evidence. which, however, the photograph reaches others and they immediately publish it and talk about it. And then misinformation is generated, and that's also a risk because they could be introducing falsified material, and suddenly we will end up contaminating the entire investigation. So that's the serious problem we're having.
Well, the hands, those they have been able to investigate well, the big ones.
The large hands have had their X-ray exams, they've had their tomography. So that's why we can support, we can provide information about what we've seen from the X-rays, because everything we talk about is based on this from other things we don't have that we've seen, because we've seen many bodies, we've seen photographs, but as I said, we can't talk or go out freely to make a spectacle to say that we are the flag bearers of the investigation and say present a body and this is another body. So there we have already seen that it is. That's why I tell you the investigation is moving away from the academic scientific side. It's going to the side of the spectacle, and that doesn't benefit anyone.
A laboratory in Puerto Rico specialized in paleo-DNA has studied these hands and has conducted carbon-14 dating of these large hands and determined that they are over 6,000 years old. Where in Peru is there biological material from this era of 6,000 years to assemble a hand? There isn't. So we must conclude that they must be authentic. Besides that, the scientists from the US are also studying material from these hands and conclude that they are indeed authentic. And as Eduardo has said, we have conducted X-rays and tomographies of these hands and no signs of fraud can be detected.
No cuts are seen, no. Many said there were joints between the phalanges that allowed the union of the bones. In reality, there is no evidence that tells us these hands are a fraud. So that's where the controversy comes in, right? We are facing things that are very, very, very real.
And strange, very strange. Okay, I wanted to ask you a couple more things if you have time. We're
Yes.
good on time. Okay. I want to know, because this has been said a lot on Mausan's side too, and it catches my attention that they talk about a genetic laboratory, that this is the site. Is this it? Where does that come from? Because they say that if you can tell us something.
That is information that I have been investigating in the area through testimonies of many locals, because you have to investigate the iconography and the versions, investigating names and all this and that. Unfortunately, as always happens, it's the information we've commented on here, but that has also been appropriated by Mausan, not discovered. We have done that. And we have commented on it at that level still, because we still need more evidence, right? But there are current names in Nazca about archaeological centers, about places, etc. that seem to have a relationship precisely with that kind of things.
If you want the genuine name of the area, of the site, in the Caucasus language it means the laboratory, and the supposed site area has an indigenous name that means laboratory and specifies in the word and talks about sperm. We're talking about
place of manipulation,
of genetic experimentation, and we're not talking about agronomic experiment. We're not talking about a corn plant like here in Cusco we have Morey, which was a site of agricultural experiment. In the Nazca area we're talking about a site where hybridizations and cloning were done. That's what the locals in the area talk about.
And it's a language, well, they are names that still exist, that people speak. But by investigating a little further, it transcends that they were names that still existed in the time of the Nazca, of the Paracas, with a language that is now lost. Resorting to that language is that it had more or less that kind of meaning. So that's another point, for example, that reinforces the investigation of these bodies, because we're not only talking about the real bodies, we're talking about the fact that there are geoglyphs throughout the area with representations of three-fingered beings, clearly identifiable petroglyphs. We have iconography on huacos, on looms, and now we have these strange names with a language that has already been lost that allude precisely also to strange things. So all this would give us indications that really this whole place is very strange and that something really was happening in these places.
And do you know the name of this place?
Yes, of course.
Can you reveal it?
I would prefer not to, because the people who are going to see this video might be able to locate the area that is in the polygon of the mystery of culture, and it can generate very bad things in the area. However, There is an old man who lives not far from the site, who has told us that he has also talked to us about this area, talking about the existence of Inca galleries. He said, but Inca can mean Nazca something. That's a word today a bit generic when you say that's Inca. And talking about galleries. And he assured us that sometimes he hears noises like music, like artificial noises coming from such a pyramid-shaped mountain. And he told us that he has lived in the area for more than 60 years, and we think he must know Mario.
But he's not the only one. I tell you, Pavel, he's not the only one, because the people who sometimes cross these deserts, I interviewed many people, because you have to blend in and adapt to the place, right? So there are many people who talk about having seen even now very strange things. They have seen beings, living beings, alive in the desert. So
What?
this is an example of information that we keep, but we take it with caution for now. But I mean, there are people who do give you evidence that they have seen things like this.
Currently, several witnesses have told us, and we are talking about the same sector, that in 2018, for example, one would have found a large gray that was lying down. It is said that he was looking at it like this for minutes and then left. And we are talking about the same sector.
There is something else, Pavel, that just in incursion in this whole area, we are forgetting that there are also myths and legends, which is very traditional in all cultures. And it turns out that I have accessed a very old publication where they tell legends, and precisely what do you think in the legends? They talk about strange beings that have come out, that have had contact, that gave them gold, etc. So there's a whole legend that reinforces that it's truly a very magical, very strange place.
Yes, very interesting. And for me, in fact, the site is the cornerstone. Regarding the Nazca Mummies, it's perhaps the most important element, because there might be more archaeological context material that archaeologists will have to study in the future when the authorities open their eyes a bit. And with that, we are always proposing projects to the Ministry of Culture precisely to organize scientific prospecting operations for them, with them.
Sorry, let's go if you want. I have a couple more questions to ask you. One has to do with the relationship between Ica and Kari. Do you have a good relationship? Because speaking with Dr. Salce and biologist Jose de la Cruz, they assure me that only in Ica are their bodies confirmed as real. But according to what we've been discussing, you also have many bodies that have already been confirmed as real, right?
No, they have shown us bodies, and in reality, all the bodies that we have been able to study and take samples from, etc., have been delivered to the University of Ica.
Okay.
We had an agreement with the team from the university to be able to access these bodies if we needed to, etc. And then we found out about other bodies, like the latest Montserrat that has a fetus, which seem. I'm going to tell you an anecdote to show you how foolish we are. And they recovered Jaime Maussan, etc., Montserrat, several hybrids. And for me, it was a scandal, and that's why we decided to cut this collaboration, because they are not acting legally and with professional ethics. But since they didn't have any technician to exploit the tomographies, because when you do tomographies, you have the raw data, but to interpret, an expert is needed. So our expert from Inkarri agreed to work for them. That's why you can see the videos, the HD scans of Montserrat, Sebastian, Santiago, etc. Thanks to David, our technician. But do you think they have ever thanked Inkarri or our technician for these tomographies? Nothing. And so that hurts a bit.
Yes, of course, obviously. And also, obviously, when Maussan sees this, he will say that if they have proof, which he always does when they talk like this about him, what I would like is for him to understand that this type of topic surpasses any person, and what matters is reaching the truth, and above all, trying to work together transparently. But for me, the problem is that Jaime is not just him, it's a whole apparatus around him economically, and this is what's causing the main problem. And it's what's causing, for example, that you are not given the recognition and also the financial support to the institute that you deserve for the role you have played in this. And I think this is the intention of being able to talk to you now, and also to translate everything you have told me now into English, so that people know what's really happening within all of this. And let's hope, I have no intentions of attacking anyone. What I want is simply for everyone involved to understand the magnitude of this case, and that's why I wanted to talk to you. Thank you very much, but I have one last question. Don't know if you want to comment on this more.
No, look, thank you very much, first of all, for your words and for your invitation. And we recognize the work of Jaime Maussan. We must recognize that thanks to the conferences they organized in 2023 at the Congress of the Republic of Mexico on September 12th and on November 7th, and we participated in this conference. This case has gained worldwide significance, and that seems very good to me. But after that, there is a way of working, a lack of ethics that we did not find correct. And I don't say it only with respect to the Inkarri Institute, but also in a somewhat general way and giving too much spectacle to the Nazca issue. I don't know if it's the best way to help the case, and sometimes a little tranquility is needed to let scientists in their laboratories study the samples and draw their conclusions. And also because I think we are almost finishing the interview, I would like to pay tribute to our great friend and brother, Raimundo Salas Alfaro, who passed away a few days ago, last week. He was the first radiologist to perform these tomographies. He was of professionalism, of kindness. You have no idea, Pavel, but a good man inhabited by, the will to give this information to universal knowledge. And he did it for free, without profit, etc. I would like to pay him this tribute, and it seems a bit sad to me, for example, that Jaime Maussan in his third millennium programs has not thanked this man, without whom we would not have been able to advance and make these discoveries. Well, after him,
we are going to ensure that his name remains in the history books. Rest assured, because as I say, this topic surpasses any person, but it also remembers those who did well. And this will not stay like this, his name. And yours and all the people who have done it ethically, I am sure that they are the ones who will end up standing out. We will take care of that because the UFO community in the US and part of Mexico are also very protective because they have been deceived for decades with many topics. So they are always on the defensive with this type of topics. But they are also always very aware of those who they see are doing something to uncover the truth and not for profit. So rest assured that the names of the people who did well will always be remembered. And channels like this, and that's why I want you to go to other channels too, where they can interview you and you can give your version of the facts and how you have been working. That is super important to me.
Well, thank you very much in any case, dear Pavel. And for me, the facts are the facts and DNA speaks for itself. And the DNA, I will repeat, of Maria, of Victoria, is available to any scientist around the world. I also wanted to acknowledge the magnificent work of our Mexican geneticist friend Ricardo Rangel, who has conducted an incredible study on the genome of Maria and has discovered that Maria was the product of a very complex hybridization with 4 DNA: bonobo, chimpanzee, Homo sapiens, and unknown. These are facts. They are not things that have been invented. It is not the product of a forgery, because in the NCBI are the raw data of the DNA analysis. So any geneticist in the world can access, study, and draw their own conclusions, but they are facts. And we call the attention of all scientists who want to support this study, because this study will change the course. It will change the history of humanity, because it means that Homo sapiens, we are not the only ones, and perhaps in a remote time we have been in contact with beings more advanced, perhaps more intelligent than us.
Now we are going to start. I can't let you go without asking you something about Dr. Celestino Piotti, because I was going to talk
about Dr. Piotti, to converse with her. He told me to greet you for him and that he's going to watch this program, so we warmly greet Dr. Piotti, who has made a fabulous presentation at the Congress of the Republic of Mexico last November and is doing incredible work on the subject of these mummies.
I'm already halfway through the book. It has already arrived for me, and honestly, it's very hard to believe that the way he did the measurements and the conclusions he's reaching blow anyone's mind who listens to them. I've already had 2 conversations with him, and what I want is for him to go where you are and have the bodies in front of him and study them with his measurements to verify what he has already been investigating. Because I understand that the measurements he made, he already had bodies in front of him too, but I think he needs to continue the research. Do you all agree?
Obviously, he is welcome. I already told him 2 days ago, welcome to Peru and Cusco, Dr. Piotti.
Very well. And what do you think about Dr. Piotti's conclusion that the 60 centimeter beings and also the taller ones are our descendants?
That's incredible. It's almost philosophical, and I find it super interesting, fascinating, and there's a lot to think about in Dr. Piotti's conclusions, which say that in reality, Maria is the last stage of human evolution before a break towards a new species. That could be the small reptilians, and I find it incredible. So Maria, Josefina, Albert, Montserrat would not be our ancestors, but our future. And there's a lot to think about in this hypothesis.
That was really something when we heard Dr. Piotti's presentation. Yes, and it really blows your mind. Sometimes just talking about what we are investigating now, people are already confused. Imagine talking to them about Dr. Piotti's hypothesis. It will blow their minds. I don't know if there are still people who are fundamentally prepared to understand that possibility. But yes, it's something that blows your mind, and there is.
To remember that Dr. Piotti is not just any amateur. He is an anthropologist, an archaeologist, a professor in Cordoba, and has worked with the Cordoba prosecutor's office and has studied
thousands
of bodies. He knows what he's talking about, and he has a career spanning many decades. He's not just any scientist, and so his conclusions are incredible.
Agreed. Well, guys, gentlemen, thank you very much for attending to us and for talking to the public about this. I think it was very necessary. If you have any message to give to the audience about what we discussed and what you expect for the near future with this whole case.
Well, first of all, thank you again. It was a great pleasure to be able to talk with you and to tell you and your audience that the Inkarri Institute is more than ever investigating the case, although sometimes we don't communicate like another team, and that it is a real case with very important historical implications in the future. And we hope that in the near future it will be possible to work in close collaboration with the Peruvian authorities of the Ministry of Culture and perhaps create a site museum to be able to make this great archaeological treasure available to the entire public. And also hoping that the responsible parties of the Ministry of Culture will be able to take measures to prevent trafficking and stop the trafficking, and that this material, which does not belong to private collectors but to the nation's heritage and the heritage of humanity, leaves the country. And in this sense, your program helps a lot by spreading this information.
Yes, Pavel, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. And as you see, we really appreciate that you have taken our version. Although it is true we do not have the communicative infrastructure that is managed from the other side, but thank you for this opportunity, and we are ready to give our version. Anyone who wants to know how this discovery was made, the history of this, but from the initial team, we are willing to make it known, and not only to make ourselves known, but as Thierry says, all these investigations that we have done are public, they are open. If there are people who want to investigate, they should get in touch, or they can go to the Alien Project page. There are the materials, and they can by their own means. I mean, we have found many people who say that all this is false, and they simply let themselves be carried away by rumors. But the best way is for them to enter and investigate for themselves, and maybe they can even give us more surprises, because this is universal knowledge. This belongs to the world. This is not the Inkarri. This is a discovery that can change history. And so welcome, and we are happy to make our version known and support anyone who wants to investigate.
Thank you very much.
So a big hug, Pavel, from the navel of the world. Very well, we will be in touch.
Greetings from the butt of the world. Just kidding, it's a joke.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.